that we do have Mike Araujo in the studio with us to talk with us about a few things going on here. So let's see if Mike might be around the corner.
I am, in fact.
Thanks for coming in today, sir. I'm going to put your right foot is here, and then you shake it all about.
Right.
Well, I appreciate your coming in today. You've always got a lot on your agenda as an activist in the community. I see you all around. Are you going to Cranston this evening?
I am.
That's one of the things I do want to talk about, but I want to backtrack to why we had you in today. Had an event yesterday.
Yeah, at Brady Sullivan at the U.S. Rubber Mill in 11 Eagle Street yesterday.
So talk to us about that. It was under the guise of dirty contractors, concerned about lead and working conditions. And what was the event yesterday, and what are you looking to achieve?
Well, so it was kind of a kickoff event. We were trying to put the employer on notice that it's a company that has a record of wage theft, pollution, and just not really respecting the community. And so we were trying to get them shut down, and so we started yesterday.
And conversations with leaders in the community?
Yeah, so we've been talking to several different groups, reaching out to churches, daycare centers, people who have a real stake in chemical exposure for their youth.
And is it limited to the facility? Is it the proximity of the neighborhood? How many people are we talking about here?
Well, that's a dense, the only
very dense
area. So I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I mean, there are several thousand people that live in the immediate, within 500 yards of that facility. In fact, the facility that they're doing the sandblasting in is occupied. So it's literally connected by an air shaft with a simple membrane wall, which is not enough. And it's not so much that, I'm sure the intent of the workers isn't to poison anyone. Nobody ever wants to. But if they're not given the training or the equipment to do it, then it's inevitable.
And what are you hearing from the workers then?
Well, so the company itself has a reputation of being fairly aggressive when people try to speak up. They don't get called back, or paychecks get delayed or not paid. So it's hard to get to them. Quietly they'll speak. One of the things that we pointed out was that while they're sandblasting, they're wearing simple paper suits and a paper mask, which doesn't prevent lead from getting in, is that the first thing that happens when they go home is that their kids run up to them and do what every kid in the world does, right? You run up and you hug your dad. And then when we point out that unless they have a change of clothes, they're poisoning their families, then they start to talk, right? And then their wives start to talk. And we've heard the normal stories that we hear from an abusive contractor, that corners are cut, improper training, not enough personal protection equipment. So it's putting workers at risk and the neighborhood at risk.
Do you think there's an adequate response, again, from elected officials who might be hearing about this and saying, well, what are they doing and what needs to be done?
So Rhode Island has a pretty complicated layer of regulatory agencies. I think there's 4 that can get involved in trades, whereas like in Massachusetts or Connecticut, if somebody's caught doing this, it's just a padlock on the job until they can prove they're doing the right thing. So here, they get stop work orders and they're allowed to keep working. It doesn't entirely make sense to me because it's not really a stop work or whatever. And so reforming that process is going to be something that we look at. Empowering the DLT to enforce workplace safety rules, allowing people to know what chemicals are in the area, stuff like that. So our legislators are responsive. Most people are pretty shocked when they see the video that we showed.
Yeah, so talk to us about yesterday's event. Do you think you got a reaction to it?
Yeah, we did. So, well, you know you did, because you can tell how angry sometimes so you can tell the difference between the guys that wear the white hard hats and the guys that wear the hard hats that are red or blue or yellow. The white hard hats are the bosses. A lot of yelling, fair amount of yelling. They were pretty upset that we were there. Some of the tenants came out and were told that they had to sign waivers, lead exposure waivers, which I don't know if you can waive, but anyway. Some people, prospective tenants, were asking questions. I think we handed out 75 flyers. We got several calls back from community members about being careful about lead exposure and testing.
And you're working with a broad coalition involved in this effort.
Yeah.
So talk to us, who else are you working with on this?
This is a project of Rhode Island Jobs with Justice, so it's our entire coalition is going to be weighing in on it. So that's 50 different community, church, labor groups, student groups. Childhood Lead Action Project has been really kind of a vital part of this, and a couple other unions.
And so had the event this week. What do you anticipate seeing if any action's taken? Will you continue to take action?
Well, so yeah, we will continue to take action because it's not just never just one thing. Like if someone's a serial polluter, chances are they're a serial other workplace violations, right? So worker justice is definitely part of it. So we'd love to see every worker get a collective bargaining agreement, or let's get treated that way, or make sure that tax agreements and tax stabilization agreements aren't applied to companies that are serial abusers.
And you focused on Eagle Square and Brady Sullivan. Other folks, I mean, what have you taken in the action in past regarding this issue?
Yeah, so there's usually when we approach an employer that's doing something pretty abusive, like there's a shipyard in Quonset that was sandblasting deep sea buoys, which is I had no idea about. Right,
Sandblasting deep sea.
Well,
okay.
they get stuff grows on them.
Yes.
You know.
So that comes out and they're
right.
blasting
So it turns out this company was giving people respirators after working there for 90 days.
Okay.
Right. So it's like you earn your respirator. It's very strange. As you learn how to do the job better, you finally get your protective equipment. We engaged in an organizing action there, and the company did reform a lot of its practices. So it's even if we don't win a complete victory, usually reform follows that process. And so, you know, a lot of contractors, most contractors do the right thing. In fact, they invest a huge amount of money in training to make sure they do the right thing. The ones that are organized in unions nearly always do the correct thing, because the employees become part of the watchdog process. And when you start to break that chain is when we start to see people like Brady Sullivan, who have a long history of this process.
And as I said, I see you out a lot of places. I'm at a lot of places covering events, oftentimes at very similar events. You know, top issues right now with jobs with justice. What would you say?
So driver's licenses for undocumented workers is probably number one, keeping a community protected and safe, especially with such great insecurity right now. There's been an uptick in racist attacks and just racist attitudes in general. Even the legislature, we've seen 4 really pretty draconian anti-immigrant bills enter this year. Usually there's one. Representative Corvisi really just hates people that come from other countries deeply. So, but this year he's gone whole hog. And so going after stuff like that is really rare.
Will you target representatives specifically?
Well, we can't because we're not a profit. But we'll target his policies, absolutely.
And so last year, you know, there was a lot of action and rallies up at the State House for licenses, and here we are, 2017. Any difference with the composition of the assembly? What are you hearing from folks in terms of the appetite? And again, you know, the governor had said that she was going to sign the order.
She didn't just say, she promised. I mean, she signed a document that said she was going to.
And what was the next move? Then she backed up and said she thought it should be handled at the assembly level. Was that her?
Yeah. So she said it would be best to be decided by the people's body, which arguably, yeah. But one of the things that we found over and over again in history is that when you leave rights of a minority up to the majority doesn't always do the right thing. And a lot of times it takes an executive action or a court action in order to protect the minority. This is a perfect example of that. We saw some pretty aggressive anti-immigrant flyering during the campaign. A lot of candidates ran on pretty expressly anti-immigrant positions. The entire vibe of the country elected a president who is he has no other policy other than it being anti-immigrant. So we saw a change in tone, and that's made it an uphill battle. But it does mean that the governor still signed a document that said she promised to sign an executive order within a year of her being elected. We're going to hold her to that.
Okay. And talk to us nationally about licenses. I mean, we oftentimes focus myopically on. So give us the national picture where the national trends are.
It's a hard fight, right? Like, there's a real nativist tendency in this country, but in states that have allowed undocumented people to get licenses, they've seen no change in, they just see stabilized communities. They don't see destabilization. They see increased revenue from registration, better fee paying, better fine collect, like all that stuff. So honestly, most economists, most people who study societies for a long time realize like normalizing immigration, any kind of immigration, tends to be a net positive. Taking people out from the underground and putting them above ground is usually for the best of society.
And what do you have to say to kind of the recent, we just had Georgia Hollister Isman in with Rhode Island Working Families, and a lot of the groups keeping the pressure on the Rhode Island delegation to stand strong against the president and his policies, and especially from the left. Talk to me from a political vantage point. Do you think that the delegation is hearing from those folks who are there, or do you think we're going to see continued sort of push and pull between DC and what the pressure that's being put on
Yeah,
by the
so
real, progressives here.
I have a kind of two minds of that. Like, it's important to let our delegation know how important the issues are, and so by keeping them engaged and keeping pressure up is really important. But we have a pretty good delegation, pretty responsive, fairly easy to get a hold of. They come to a lot of events, and they usually will engage in a conversation with you, and that's pretty important. But locally seems to be the spot that we keep missing, and progressives keep missing the step. Like, 33 state legislators are all red, right? Like, we don't do good at local politics. And so in Rhode Island, an equal pay initiative was defeated last year, right? I mean, equal pay for women should be an obvious thing, yet Chamber of Commerce trots out 3 women to argue against it, and it loses. I mean, it's just, that is a progressive thing that needs to be passed. Probation reform, bail reform. There's a series of things that need to happen. I mean, we had a Blue Lives Matter bill get heard yesterday, and that seems ridiculous to me in Rhode Island.
So again, you've got a lot on your plate, and then you're going to Cranston this evening. They're
Yeah.
holding the hearing for what the mayor calls the road safety initiative. You've taken the position it's anti-panhandling. And what happens if that, in your opinion, because you're opposed and the mayor's staunchly backing it? What happens, in your opinion, if it gets approved and it goes forth?
Well, what happens if it passes? Like, what happens to poor people that depend on begging to make a living? They will be hungry. That's what will happen.
And so I know the mayor has said that I don't want to put words, but it was he's going to address social service issues. Are you going to keep the pressure on to see what happens in Cranston?
Right. So they had a hearing on this in October, and I brought up in testimony that they should be focused on social services, that you have to go to the root of the problem and find the structural issue, and that a lot of the folks that are doing the panhandling aren't homeless. There's a couple of veterans out there who simply just run out of money at the end of the month, and that's hard, right? Nobody wants to be hungry. So you have to address the actual core issue, and unless you're prepared to do it, you're not dealing with the problem. Cranston doesn't seem to have the motivation, the will, or the money to do comprehensive social programming. Like, the cost to either house or stabilize these folks would be relatively low comparatively to the enforcement cost. And it seems to me $1 better spent would be opening up better soup kitchens, providing rental support, counseling, all the series of process that could happen. They need to do, but you have to decide what was it? Martin Luther King said a budget is a moral document, and so you have to make a moral choice about what you value. Calling it public safety is a lie, and we know it's a lie, and I think we should stop pretending that it's something that's not, and it's a moral statement about how they value poor people.
And how would you say here in Providence, there was a lot of attention paid to it when Mayor Pialino put forth a proposal. Around the same time, Mayor Alorza put forth proposals of how to address issues in Kennedy Plaza, in the downtown area of a myriad of needs of individuals who have a myriad of needs. Social services, again, the things you outlined in Cranston, but he put forth a number of proposals and initiatives. How do you think Providence is doing as we speak in February 2017? From what we'd heard back, I think it was in the fall of what the mayor had talked about. Have we made any progress?
It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. Winter is hard on people, and it's hard to it's hard to organize folks or keep folks outside when it's so cold out, right? Especially if they're trying to hustle for their nickel to eat. The cost to house the chronically homeless in Providence would be about $5 million. It would not be a lot of money. It's possible. It's a housing first program that was actually pioneered in Rhode Island but never implemented in places that's been tried, like Colorado or Tempe, Arizona. It's been wildly successful. But you can't do partial measures. And
so how was the housing first? You said proposed here, so what happened?
Well, it was, again, a budget is a moral document. You make a moral choice at the end of the day. You say, this is not where I'm going to put my values. And it's a simple proposal that you put somebody in a shelter, not just a place that they can call home, and then they can deal with diabetes, you can get them into drug counseling, they're able to go and deal with their lives. And once they do that, they tend to stay that way. I mean, it's nobody likes to sleep out in the cold if they don't have to.
So you're going to be in Cranston this evening, keeping your eye on Brady Sullivan issue, keeping an eye on what's going on in the State House and licenses.
Yeah, licenses and minimum wage stuff. and
Yeah, the
wage
fair
limits.
shot agenda.
Yeah, in general. I mean, I don't know if that. I don't actually know too much about the fair shot agenda.
It was a bunch of packages.
It was a lot of
Earned sick
stuff.
time
Right.
and minimum
so
wage.
earned sick
and-
time is very, very important. But we did a survey, a worker survey over the summer where we talked to about 400 workers in WIC offices and farmers market. We went everywhere, bus stops, and asked what the number one thing that folks need. The number one thing that folks needed, and it was wages. Was people are poor, they're broke. They want to take a break. They want to be able to afford things without feeling like they're panicking on it. And the things that we need to do that, we need to be a little bit more creative about.
So I know that I've got things on your agenda moving forward that hopefully you'll come in and talk with us about in terms of
Anytime.
actions that you take. Again, had wanted to get you in. I'm glad you could come in today to talk about this. Get the word out. Again, Mike Araujo with
Araujo,
with Jobs for Justice, and I really appreciate your coming in today.
Of course,
Do you like
my
our new
pleasure.
studio?
I do. It's beautiful. This is great.
So it's funny. Everyone who's been here, I think you saw a little as well. The Yellow Jackets come by and they
Yeah.
they give us the high sign.
That's
They
nice.
waved to the governor and she
Yeah.
waved back. So always welcome here. We look forward to having you in soon.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
so
time
much. I
today.